The Indiana Fever just pulled off the most shocking upset of the WNBA season, and they did it without their biggest star. But here's the twist nobody's talking about. They might have won because Caitlin Clark wasn't playing, not in spite of it. What happened in Minneapolis on Tuesday night exposed a truth about this Fever team that even their own fans didn't see coming. Before we dive into this wild story, if you're enjoying this deep dive into what really went down, hit that like button and subscribe for more insider WNBA content. Trust me, what you're about to hear will change how you see this entire season. Picture this, the Minnesota Lynx, sitting pretty at 14-2, undefeated at home, defending Commissioner's Cup champions, hosting a Fever team that's been drowning in drama all season. Vegas had the Lynx as 10.5-point favorites. That spread only tells half the story though, because what happened behind closed doors in Indianapolis over the past month almost tore this team apart. Let's start with Caitlin Clark's body breaking down in ways nobody expected. This is a player who went 185 consecutive games without missing a single one, dating back to her freshman year at Iowa. She was the Iron Woman of basketball. Then suddenly, she's missed 8 games this season alone. First, it was the quad injury that knocked her out for 3 weeks. Just when she came back and dropped 32 points on the Liberty, her groin gives out. But that groin injury timing? Let's just say some people around the league are raising eyebrows. Clark gets hurt right after a physical game against Seattle, misses the next 3 games, including the biggest non-playoff game of the season. Some insiders are whispering that maybe, just maybe, this injury got a little extra rest time because the Fever needed to figure out who they really were without their franchise player. And they desperately needed to figure that out because the DeWanna Bonner situation had turned into a complete disaster. Here's what really went down. The Fever brought in Bonner as this championship-experienced veteran who would mentor their young stars. 2-time WNBA champion, supposed to be the perfect fit next to Clark and Aliyah Boston. Instead, she played 3 games, averaged less than 3 points, and then disappeared for 2 weeks citing personal reasons. But sources close to the situation painted a different picture. Bonner couldn't handle being in Caitlin Clark's spotlight. One reporter even said the circus that follows Clark everywhere made it impossible for veterans like Bonner to find their role. She wanted out so badly that she was telling people she'd only play for Phoenix or Atlanta. Think about that. A professional athlete essentially refusing to play for the team paying her because she couldn't handle not being the main character. The Fever finally cut her loose on June 25th, but not before the locker room had been poisoned by weeks of uncertainty. Players were walking on eggshells, coaches were trying to manage a crisis, and meanwhile they're supposed to be building chemistry for a championship run. As if that wasn't enough drama, Sophie Cunningham, who was supposed to be another veteran stabilizer, gets dragged into a massive scandal. Court documents from a lawsuit against the Phoenix Suns revealed allegations that Cunningham had been having an affair with Josh Bartelstein, the married CEO of both the Suns and Mercury. The timing couldn't have been worse. Here's Cunningham trying to establish herself with her new team while her name is being dragged through the mud in headlines across the basketball world. Cunningham denied everything, called the accusations extremely hurtful, and pointed out she'd never even met the person making the claims. But the damage was done. Every time she walked into the Fever facility, everyone knew what the whispers were about. Players were getting asked about it by reporters. It became another dark cloud hanging over a team that was supposed to be ascending. So by the time the Commissioner's Cup final rolled around, the Indiana Fever looked nothing like the team everyone expected to see in January. Their 2 biggest free agent signings, one was gone, the other was fighting off scandal accusations. Their franchise player, watching from the bench in street clothes for the 3rd straight game, the head coach Stephanie White, she'd missed time earlier in the season for personal reasons too. This is the team that walked into Target Center to face the best squad in the WNBA. Minnesota hadn't just been winning, they'd been destroying people. Nafisa Collier was putting up MVP numbers, averaging over 24 points a game. They had the best record, the best point differential, and they were at home where they literally hadn't lost all season. The game started exactly how everyone expected. Minnesota jumped out to a 20-12 lead after the first quarter. Collier was getting whatever she wanted. The Lynx crowd was electric. When Jessica Shepard scored to put Minnesota up 27-14 with 8 minutes left in the first half, it looked like this might get ugly fast. That's when something incredible happened. The Fever locked in defensively in a way they hadn't all season. They held Minnesota scoreless for the final 8 minutes and 13 seconds of the first half. Not a single point. The best offensive team in the league couldn't buy a bucket. Natasha Howard, the 33-year-old veteran who'd won 3 championships with Seattle and New York, started bodying up Collier on every possession. She was making the MVP frontrunner work for every inch of space. Meanwhile, the Fever's role players started stepping up in ways they never had when Clark was on the floor. Sophie Cunningham, playing with all that scandal noise in the background, drained 3 huge three-pointers. Sydney Colson, who'd been brought in as the 15th player on the roster, was running the offense with poise. Harry McDonald, remember, she was only on the team because they cut Bonner, was hounding Minnesota's guards full court. But here's what really stood out. Aliyah Boston started playing like the #1 overall pick she was supposed to be. Without Clark dominating the ball, Boston was demanding post touches, making decisions, leading the team vocally. She finished with 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. But the stats don't tell the whole story. Late in the game, when things got chippy with Collier, Boston stood her ground, scored, and lifted her arms to the road crowd like she owned the place. The Fever ended up winning 74-59. They held the Lynx to their worst offensive performance of the season, 34.9% shooting. 16 turnovers. Collier managed just 12 points on 6 of 18 shooting with 5 turnovers. Her worst game of the year by far. After the game, the celebration told you everything about how this team had come together through adversity. Caitlin Clark, who easily could have been sulking about missing the biggest game, turned into the team's biggest cheerleader. Video from the locker room showed her using the Commissioner's Cup trophy as a champagne chalice, making sure every teammate got their drink. At one point, she's yelling, "Is KK 21?" about their rookie, making sure nobody got left out of the celebration. During an Instagram live session, Clark made a comment that sent shockwaves through the WNBA world. She said, "Guys, I just know everybody in the league is sick." Her teammates burst out laughing, with Boston adding, "They're PISSED." It was Clark acknowledging what everyone's been thinking. The rest of the league resents the attention the Fever get, resents Clark's popularity, and now they really resent that Indiana just won without their biggest star. But here's where this story takes another twist. The Commissioner's Cup might actually be cursed. The last 2 teams to win it, Vegas in 2023 and New York last year, both went on to lose in the WNBA Finals. It's like winning this midseason tournament uses up all your championship karma. The Fever are sitting at 8-8, clinging to the 8th seed. They've got to climb in the standings just to make the playoffs, let alone make a finals run. Stephanie White said something revealing after the game. She talked about how important it was for the team to learn how to win without Clark, to make plays in tough moments when their usual bailout option wasn't available. Think about what she's really saying there. This team had become so dependent on Clark that they'd forgotten how to play basketball without her. That's the hidden blessing in Clark's injuries. It forced Howard to remember she's a 3-time champion. It forced Boston to remember she was the #1 pick before Clark showed up. It forced role players like Cunningham and McDonald to step up and prove they belonged. Most importantly, it forced them to come together as a team instead of just being Caitlin Clark and the others. The $500,000 prize pool they won is nice, $30,000 per player plus $5,000 extra for Howard winning MVP, but the real prize was discovering they could beat the best team in the league on the road without their superstar. That's the kind of confidence that can transform a season. Now Clark has to come back and fit into this new dynamic. The Fever aren't her team in the same way anymore. They've proven they can win without her. That might create some tension, but it also might be exactly what this team needed. Instead of the pressure being entirely on Clark's shoulders, now she knows Howard can lock down opposing stars, Boston can dominate inside, and the role players can hit big shots. The question is whether this momentum can last. The Fever have 5 straight home games coming up, starting Thursday against Las Vegas. Clark's status is still uncertain. White keeps saying they won't rush her back. Part of you wonders if they're being extra cautious precisely because the team played so well without her. Why risk re-aggravating the injury when you just proved you can beat anyone? There's also the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. What happens if the Fever keep winning without Clark? What if they go on a run, climb in the standings, and suddenly there's a real debate about whether the team is better with their superstar on the bench? It sounds crazy, but stranger things have happened in sports. The smart money says Clark comes back soon, probably for that Vegas game. She's too competitive to sit out much longer, especially after watching her teammates celebrate without her. But she's coming back to a different team than the one she left. A team that's been through scandal, betrayal, and adversity. A team that found its identity in the crucible of a championship game without its best player. Tuesday night in Minneapolis might go down as the night the Indiana Fever grew up. They walked in as Caitlin Clark's team. They walked out as something more dangerous, a team that knows it can win when the lights are brightest, when the odds are stacked against them, when their star is sitting on the bench in street clothes. The rest of the WNBA should be worried, not just because the Fever won the Commissioner's Cup, but because of how they won it. They didn't just beat the Lynx, they dominated them. They didn't just survive without Clark, they thrived. They didn't just overcome adversity, they used it as fuel. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what really happened with the Fever's stunning championship run, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Fever are actually better without Caitlin Clark? Or was this just a one-game miracle? The answer might determine whether Indiana can break the Commissioner's Cup curse and make a real finals run. This Fever team has been through more drama in half a season than most teams see in years. But sometimes that's exactly what it takes to forge a championship mentality. Tuesday night proved they have the talent. Now we get to find out if they have the staying power. One thing's for sure, the rest of the league is definitely sick about it.